Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, Bronson.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, Jen. And I love for those listening, you're dressed in money colors. So we're saying you're drawing money just by the way you're dressed there.
That's funny. Well, being a manifestation show, maybe that's what this is all about.
I
I'm going to
love it.
roll with it anyways. I would love for you to share with the listeners just who you are and what your story is.
Yeah, so I was a well-paid medical sales professional. I was making over $200,000 a year. I had a good job, but I was working pretty hard. One thing in the medical field, it's hard for people to take time off. And a lot of people can relate with this. We work hard and it's just hard to be able to actually enjoy life. And so a lot of times we become, even if you're paid well, it can be a time for money trade. And so I worked with a couple of physicians that I worked very closely with that made over $2 million a year each, which is a lot of money, but they were working 60 to 80 hours a week every week, and it was hard to take vacations. And so I just thought, that to me doesn't feel like financial freedom. And so a lot of people say financial freedom, but really it's time freedom. That's what I wanted, was the time freedom, right? That financial freedom can get. And so I started learning about real estate. I'd had some single family houses. I realized I was actually creating another job for myself. So a lot of people think buying single family houses is developing passive income. It's actually creating another job for you. And so there's this whole other area I learned about called syndication, which is basically raising money for larger deals. Could be real estate. We're also doing stuff in oil and gas or other private equity type stuff that provide cash flow, tax benefits, or appreciation to investors. And so there's a lot that happened, but basically learning about this, I was able to raise some money for a deal and then start to raise more money for things. Now we've raised close to $50 million over the last 6 years and help people to get cash flow, appreciation, and tax benefits. So that's really what we do. And that's the short version of it.
Fun. And I want to just go a little bit deeper here. You had a job, you were getting paid well, and then you wanted that time freedom. So was there a specific moment or something that when you were that 9 to 5 person or whatever it was for you, that you just said, I can't do this anymore?
Yeah, I wish there was some dramatic, like I flipped the table over and told my boss, screw you, and I left it. No, it didn't happen quite like that. No, I think for me, I just realized I was working hard. There was some pressure in sales. Every quarter was a bigger, better, right? If anybody's ever been in sales or had a performance-based job, which most jobs are, some sort of like there's a, hey, good job on this quarter. Let's, slap on the back, go do it again next quarter, do more and do better. And so I kind of just kept saying, I wish I had something that I could do that was like my thing. It was my business, my company, and I could help scale that. And it was actually kind of challenging for me to leave because I was making good money as a side hustle doing this. But all my family are teachers. And if you've read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a famous, if anybody hasn't read it, it's a great book kind of to learn about real estate investing. It's the first book we usually recommend. And his dad in the book, his poor dad, was in education. Both my parents are teachers. My family, my grandmother, my aunt and uncle, everybody was teachers. And so people are like, "Oh my gosh, why would you leave your great job? You make 200K. You have this is the golden handcuffs, right? Why would you leave?" But I got in this entrepreneurs group, and there was like 5 or 6 of us, and we met together every month for a year. And they just said, "Hey, you should pretty much leave your job as soon as possible. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back." And so to me, that was kind of something that gave me comfort of, oh, I could go back. So let me try this and see. Because I didn't want to be 80 years old and think, man, I wish I had tried. I wish I'd actually gone after something that was important to me and I'd really pursued it.
Yeah, that book was a game changer for me too. That was what ignited the spark in me to go, wait a second. Because you need that mindset shift. Like you said, the golden handcuffs, you're doing the thing that you were taught to do. You've
Yeah.
done it, you've achieved the thing. You're just supposed to ride it out till retirement. And you're like, wait a second, this doesn't feel good for me. I want the time freedom, which they don't tell you. You don't really have the time freedom when you
Yeah.
get those golden handcuffs, and it's not fun. So that was a pivotal moment. But the other thing you touched on in there was you got yourself in front of other people who are doing this different thing. You were getting out of that mindset of this is the only way it is. This is the only thing I have to do until retirement. So you got yourself in front of other people who probably allowed you to have that big mindset shift of, oh, I
Yeah.
can do this too.
Yeah, there's a saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? We talk about that in personal development. And so if I want to grow any area of my life, I've got to go around people that are at the next step or 5 or 10 steps ahead of me. So if I want to grow my wealth just by getting in rooms where people are wealthy, I'm going to just, even from the afterthoughts that they have, it's going to speak to me, right? Because they're doing things like the next level. Same with health or spirituality, other things. So I just think it's so important who we surround ourselves with. And so I'm a big networking guy, but also there's another quote that says, you'll be the same person 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people that you meet. So one thing is the people that you meet. The other one is the education of the books that you read. So there are two things that are really the rocket fuel that help to get people to the next level. And this show, of course, is that for a lot of people as well, is that educational piece.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a nice thing that people have access to now that I didn't necessarily have. It was audiobooks when I first started real
Yeah.
estate investing, or going to like actual in-person seminars, which is great. But to have podcasts as a daily touch point, because you have your own podcast too, to be able to help people through your voice and get messages out there. And I'm just curious, in terms of books, what are some other books you recommend for people who are on this new financial freedom journey away from a job?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of book recommends. First, I'll just share my book, Fire Yourself. It really was designed based on these thousands of phone calls with high net worth investors of like, well, I have money or I've developed my business, or how do I actually start investing in real estate? So it gives kind of a different pattern of how you do that, why Wall Street is not working for you really. You think it's working, but it's really not. That's kind of a glorified savings account because there's a lot of hidden fees. And then just getting into different alternative assets. And so I do think education is huge. We talked about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We talked about, there's one, the second book I actually enjoyed even more, called Cash Flow Quadrant. So it kind of talks about like how you earn your money and how you develop cash flow. And I have a belief that cash flow beats appreciation. So appreciation is making money long term. Cash flow is what allows you to fire yourself. It's what allows you to make work optional. So the first level of financial freedom is actually, it's called the rat race number, right? It's the number that you need for your living expenses. I was making $200K a year, but I wasn't spending $200K a year, right? So I needed just to be able to cover what I needed to live comfortably, pay for my house and where I live, and my car and insurance and travel and those kind of things. And it was only at the time, 6 years ago, I mean, inflation's come up a little bit, but it was only 5 or 6K a month. So it wasn't a lot of money. It was a much lower number. It was maybe closer to 60, 70,000 per year. So if I covered that, then I was free. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I have that amount of passive income coming in, I can choose. Do I want to go to keep working the way I want to? And that, just having that freedom is huge, because we also don't know what happens if a family member or a spouse or ourselves, we become disabled or need care, or something happens, or we just want to take time off. A lot of times we're slave to the job, we're slave to the business, we're slave to the thing that we're doing. And so starting to develop passive income, even a few $1,000s, $5, $10, $15,000 a year that's generated in passive income, is so much more powerful than active income, because you didn't work for it, right? Your money is actually working for you. And that's where Warren Buffett says, another place you can study is Warren Buffett. His biography called The Snowball is incredible. It's a long book, but it's very good. And he says, unless you learn how to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die. And so that's kind of the key quote from my book, is just like, how do I make money while I sleep? How does my money actually, after I make it, how does my money then work for me? My money has a job and it actually makes money. And how does it actually go to work for me? So that's really the whole idea of passive income. So passive income is not having an online business or stock trading or having several rental houses. Those are all active ways of doing it. But where it actually is more passive, where you do a little bit of work on the front end and then you hand it over to somebody else, and then you get the cash flow or the mailbox money as it's shared. So.
Mm-hmm. So I have so many questions from that. So first of all, the book title that you have there, Fire Yourself. What does fire yourself look like? Like, where did you come up with that term, and what does it represent to you?
Yeah, so the subtitle is Replace Your Working Income with Passive Income in 3 years or less. And so for me, I found a way to basically cover my living expenses, and I was actually able to significantly increase my net worth by over 20x in just 4 years. And some of that came through mindset and, of course, taking specific actions. But I think that most people that make a good salary, and I think if somebody makes $100,000, $200,000 a year or more, it's possible for most people within 3 to 5 years to find a way to start replacing or even fully replace their income by investing passively. Now, a good kind of rule of thumb is if you can generally get about, somewhere between 12 and 15% returns per year, which is pretty good, but there are ways to do it both through cash flow as well as appreciation, particularly alternative assets. They show statistically the returns are much higher if you invest in commercial real estate. It's almost 2 to 1 over the stock market. And so there's ways to do it. In my book, I kind of give a kind of a how-to and what to be aware of. And of course, no specific financial advice, but just educational. Hey, if I'm looking at a deal, what do I want to look for? Right? How do I know there's deals everywhere? Once you start getting in this world, there's like people doing podcasts and sharing things about their deals. And how do I vet? Like, should I invest with these guys or should I not? Or and what's their track record? How do I evaluate that? Should I do a background check? Would I ever invest with somebody if I've never met them in person? And so a lot of these questions that come around this. So just creating kind of a tool of no matter what the asset is. And again, we've started with multifamily real estate. We have 2,500 multifamily units that we've done. We've also branched out into oil and gas, which has some significant tax benefits as well as cash flow. And we're buying a private equity business or like a e-commerce business that provides a lot of cash flow for investors. So again, it comes down to really what is someone's goal. So this book was really designed to give to somebody who's, I'm making a good salary, I have a good net worth. I know I should be doing something besides stocks and bonds. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get started. This kind of walks people through a process of what's out there, why what I'm doing is not working, and really what it's for. So the idea of firing yourself, it's not that you have to. A lot of people, a lot of us love our jobs. We love what we do. We love our business, whatever. But having the flexibility is huge. And a lot of times we don't think like, hey, we just think things are going to continue on the way they are forever. But if you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, you either may not want to work or some life change happens. And to be able to have that flexibility, when you have wealth, it gives you choices, right? So when you can fire yourself, it's just the choice of, do I want to keep doing this or do I not? And, instead of in the workforce, if somebody's saying you're fired, which hopefully nobody ever gets fired from anything, but it happens, or there's a layoff or something happens in a business. And so the idea of being able to fire yourself is it's a choice to say that, hey, I can fire or retire myself. I have the choice of now, do I want to do this? Do I not? How do I want to engage with work? What's more meaningful? I think something like 65 or 70% of people say they're not engaged at work. And that's a tragedy, right? So if we could be doing things that actually give us life, and what a gift to the world, right? If we actually can really go after the things that give us purpose and give us meaning and fulfillment.
Yeah, valid points in there. And I think, I don't know if it's the same in your circle, but I know in my circle, the peers that I have that do have that option to fire themselves. Now, I love your
Yeah.
definition on it. They have that time freedom. So then they are going out and they are making more wealth for themselves, because these are all people that seem to have the drive. They're not just sitting at a job every day. They have that spark in them of, oh, now I have this time freedom. So you're like, oh, look at this opportunity. Like, you see the world through a different lens. And I feel like it's this big snowball that keeps building. And I'm just curious if you can share for somebody who's listening that is, passive investing sounds amazing. Where do I even start?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think it comes down to really what you want. Again, when I started, either people have money or they have time. So again, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I don't really have the money yet to be a passive investor, and so that's okay. That's fine. I didn't have a lot of money when I started. I just had some money, but not, millions of dollars to go invest or whatever. But some people are kind of close to retirement, so passive investing is a good choice. But if you're not, regardless, either side of passive or active investing, it's education. It's education, it's networking, it's getting in the rooms with amazing people. And I think that the best way, everything sounds weird until you've met somebody who's done it or you've done it yourself. And so when I first heard about syndication, I was like, syndication, is that's like crime syndication syndicates and also TV syndicates? Like, it just sounded weird, right? And then I started meeting people that had done it and met somebody who did it for 10 years. I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. And what I did and what I still do is I build value and wealth for people, and I build my own wealth by helping them, right? So I find people that have had challenging things. So on the active side, really, if I don't have the resources and I want to create them, I can say, well, I want to make myself valuable to valuable people. That's a quote that comes from the motivational speaker, Jim Rohn, right? Make yourself valuable to valuable people. And this is how people get paid well to do things, right? If I can solve a problem for someone who has value and that they're facing a problem, and a lot of people have a money problem in the sense that they have money, they have too much, they don't know where to put it in a way that it's going to be safe, that it's going to get a good return. So if I could be a part of educating, if I could be a part of helping, or as I do this educational side and I write a book and I do a podcast and I do webinars and things, it really provides value for people. And then they're able to trust me, so that when I say every few months, hey, we've got a new offering, we've got this new deal we're launching, then a lot of people will join because they're like, oh, I feel like I trust and I know this guy, right? He's not just doing it just because it's not about him only, he's actually trying to help me, right? So I think that it's really amazing when it comes to wealth and business and just investing, because it's not just, I can invest my own money and I do that as well. I'm also a passive investor, but I also love helping people to find new deals and find a way to what they want. Because a lot of people, once you clarify, like, I want this, I want more money. It's like, well, what do you really want? What's really important? It's like, well, I just want to be able to travel more. I just want to be able to, retire from my job, or want to be able to, and when those things happen, then they can write the book, or then they can actually serve in their church, or then they can start traveling, going overseas. They can do the things that really matter, right? The things that make them come alive. And so to me, I just want to help people come alive. And I think that when people become financially free, there's a choice there of, hey, how do I want to serve? How do I want to give back? How do I want to give to my family and also the world?
Yeah, I love that. And I loved in there how you talked about the money problem in a totally flipped way that most people look at the money
Too much
problem,
money.
right?
What do I do? Yeah.
Too much money.
It's a
That's
good
awesome.
problem to have. Or not too much. They wouldn't think it's, but they think of it as like, hey, I've got this stuff. Like, what do I do with this to where it's, but when we're on the other side of that, we don't think that way. We don't think these people just have money, but it's like, no, like they have things that they need. And if I can just get around them and figure out what they need and they want, I can help them. And when you help people, that's how you create value, and that's how people get paid. And you get
Yeah.
paid well. I mean, we've closed deals where I've made $500,000 just on the deal, right? Like, made a lot of money just simply by helping people get where they want to go. That's amazing. That's an exception, but that does happen, right?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of your books, which sounds is really fascinating. And I want to hear about your other book.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm super excited about it. It really is fitting for this podcast, the Manifestation of Money show, which is a great, yes, I love you guys are doing this. So one thing that came up in my just, raising capital and talking with investors, been able to talk with over 2,500 millionaires. And these are people that average net worth about 2 million. Some are more like 10 to 30 million or higher. And I ask lots of questions about what's important, what matters, what are they investing in, what are the personal habits they have. I'm just kind of getting real geeky and learning. And what I've realized is that there's a common theme in the US where, most people, maybe not many of your listeners or some of your listeners, but it's this belief that you either have money or you don't. You either come from a trust fund family or you don't, right? And there's this kind of belief that people have. And the facts are really actually the exact opposite. Fidelity Investments did a study in 2019 and they found that 86% of millionaires are self-made, which is
Wow.
kind of shocking, right? Shocking is that I mean, it's shocking to me too, where it's like almost 9 out of 10 people that are millionaires did not inherit their wealth, right? So should be incredibly encouraging to anybody who's not wealthy, because it means that these are learnable, teachable mindset and habit things we can do that we can become wealthy as well. So these people that I've had these calls with, they were hungry and interested to learn and about investing, all these different things. So when people have an interest and hunger in it, it can lead to this growth. So I'm happy to share, if you want, I can share a few of the things that I've learned from
Please do.
that. One of the things that I think the most kind of powerful thing that came out of, and it's going to be in this book, Rich Brain, is this idea of wealth worthiness. And what I mean by wealth worthiness is that a lot of us, we don't feel worthy of having more money. We don't feel worthy of having more resources. We wouldn't say it. We'd say we want money, we want this, but we don't actually live consistent with it. There's a disconnect between what we say and we want and what we actually are showing up with. So what'll happen is we'll self-sabotage ourselves, we'll procrastinate, we'll do other self-sabotaging behaviors that prevent us from actually getting what we say we want. Now you'll see this as well in relationships. So let's say I'm a single guy and I'm going to a party and I see a beautiful woman and I want to go over and have a conversation and say hello. And before I go over, I have this self-talk that says, oh, you're not good looking, she's not going to like you, and you've got nothing to offer to a relationship. Like, how's that conversation going to go? Well, it's probably not going to happen, or even if it does happen, it's not going to be good, right? Versus if I have, hey, I have a lot to offer, she'd be lucky to talk to me. If I have those kind of internal self, it's totally different. So it works in relationships as well, because what we say to ourselves matters, right? And we all have this negative bias we've at some point had. We're kids, we have things, people, maybe somebody from a super positive, family and all this stuff, but we just have this negative bias and it's a self-protective thing. But there is something it's kind of like a friend of mine called it a wealth thermometer, that basically is like, if I make $100,000 a year, I'm just going to find a way to make about $100,000 a year, right? And that if somebody who makes $1 million a year is just going to kind of find a way to make $1 million a year. Now, what happens for a lot of people is that they stay the same, or they regress, or they just kind of stay about where they are. They take incremental changes. So they go from 100,000, then they get it raised to 120, or they get a new job and that's 200. They kind of gradually go up. So their wealth worthiness kind of rises over time, what they feel they're worthy of. But we see in cases like in my case where it goes like a 20 or 25x jump in a net worth in a very short period of time. Well, how does that happen? That happens because you did a significant change through some different mindset or other practices to get you to feel like you are worthy of it, right? And it's shocking to me that both in our society, only 3% of Americans have written goals, but all the wealthy have, most wealthy people over 10 million have written goals. They do some sort of mindset practice. And so it's kind of weird for everybody else, but if it's weird and yet these people are experiencing a great level of success, then we should pay attention, right? So I can get into more details of that, but the wealth of worthiness concept is just really fascinating to me.
I love that. And for you, what do you think was the shift for you to make that 20 times income
Yeah.
jump?
Yeah. So I think
Significant.
it's very significant. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So I actually, on a personal level, I went through a divorce about 8 years ago. And unfortunately, when I came through it, I felt like a total, like no sense of self-confidence and just was down on myself. And so what I did is I started creating these affirmations, right? They're affirmations, things you say. I call them whisperings, because I feel like it's not just what we say in a mirror, as we're talking about, it's what we say to ourselves in the self-talk. So I started doing these whisperings where I would say, you walk in a room, you own the room. You have something to offer to everybody, every situation, whatever. And in the beginning, it kind of felt a little unauthentic, like who am I? I'm talking to the mirror. I'm sharing these things myself as I'm walking around. But over time, I'd say it took about 6 months, I started to look in the mirror and I actually started to feel it. So I was like, okay, I'm actually feeling this. It's not just I'm saying it, I'm actually feeling it. And so that's one way. But again, are things around wealth and around who I am and the value I bring, and starting to create around those things around our words, it's really, really powerful. So when we talk about manifestation, what is that? It's basically creating the person that you want to become. So Napoleon Hill, which he's not my cousin, even though we have the same last name, which I wish wish he was. He, book 70 years ago, the book Think and Grow Rich, he would say, spend 30 minutes a day thinking about the person that you intend to become. Right. Thinking about, imagining the person you intend to become. And what is that? Well, that's basically you're creating in your mind what it is you want to become. Because the person who is 10x of where you're at right now, if somebody listening is like, okay, my net worth is 100K or 5 or whatever it is, and you want to 10x that, that person on the other side is a different person. They have a different set of beliefs. They're looking at things differently, and there is a way to get there. And I'll give a real world example of this recently. So this is, 20x my net worth, whatever, but I'm still working on this on myself. So I've been saying, okay, what would 10x of me right now look like? And I've been creating what this person looks like and who this person is and what is. And an opportunity came around that's a little outside of our wheelhouse. It's not really what we do. It's an e-commerce business in the cosmetic and kind of niche women apparel space, but it's really high cash flow. And I would have I almost passed on it. Kind of like, I don't know, whatever. But because I've been creating this person, again, who's 10x more, it basically, I was able to see it. And I was able to see that potentially this could be a possibility. So we're at the 11th hour time recording this. Hopefully we'll close it this week or next week. We're right at the door of it. And it will about 4 or 5x the revenue or profit in our business almost overnight.
Wow.
Right. So the example is like, how did that happen? It happened because I created it first. And because I created it and it was there, I was able to see it when it came around. And I think a lot of times we just don't see the opportunities because we're not in the right mindset to be able to see it. We're so head down focused on what we're seeing right in front of us than to look up and say, well, who is this person that I'm creating?
Yeah, it's so true. And thank you for sharing that, because I think it's easy for us all to say, go read Think and Grow Rich. Like that book that is so old, it's probably collecting dust on people's bookshelves, but there's such value in that book. So
Yeah.
for somebody to be listening right now and to hear that you are using the principles in the book, you are applying them, and they're still working today, if not better, and to be vulnerable and be able to share and be like, hey, I talk to myself, I whisper affirmations to myself, right?
Every
I
day.
don't think people realize the weight behind that on shifting that wealth thermometer. I
Yeah.
think that they just brush it off as fluff, and not everybody, because there's so many people that I have on this show that
Do
that
it.
is a huge piece of it. If you believe that you're worthy, you become worthy and you
Yeah.
can create big, bold things in your life. And if you believe that it's not for you or it's silly, well, then you're going to keep your thermometer where it's at just because you're not willing to try different things, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Brené Brown, I love Brené Brown's work as well. She talks about authenticity and vulnerability and these things known for shame and vulnerability. But she says that the difference between people who receive great things and those that don't is the first group felt worthy of it. And so it's not just like, hey, I'm just going to choose to feel worthy of it. It just happens. Oh, I'm just going to choose. It's like you really have to invest in yourself. And, when you talk about manifestation of money, it's not just like you just have money and you have to become a different person. It's the whole idea of Robert Kiyosaki. I heard him talk about this, the idea of be, do, have, right? Be, do, I don't know if you've heard of be, do, have, but a lot of people just want to have the stuff, right? Most people's plan to get wealthy is, I just want to win the lottery. I want my rich uncle to die, or I want to, like, there's some way someone's going to gift them money. They're going to luckily get this money and they're going to have the money, right? But that's not the way it works. Is you have to actually become the person. You start with be, you become the person that's a wealthy person. You start thinking the way a wealthy person does. You say, you make a decision, you're going to do that. And then the second one is do. You do the things that a wealthy person does, right? You actually do the learning and you do the research, you do the networking, you're doing all these things, you're investing, and then you're able to have the stuff. But it doesn't happen. And if it does happen the other way, where somebody just gifts you $100 million, you're probably not going to really be able to handle it because you didn't become the person. You don't know how to do the things, and you're probably going to blow it. I mean, honestly, so that's where process and journey and just keeping it in front of you is so important. A lot of times we want stuff now, but I think that God, sometimes will prevent stuff from happening for us, that it takes longer than we want sometimes, but it also really helps us to grow so that when we do get the wealth, like, we know how to handle it.
Yeah. You had talked about that stat earlier on how many self-made millionaires there are. And there's probably an equal stat to people that have inherited wealth that didn't know how to deal with it or didn't feel worthy of it, that blew through it and no longer had the generational wealth that was passed on to it, all again because of the mindset in the reverse effect.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is. And you see it, people, they say typically we work with a lot of wealthy families now, a lot of people that are wealthy, and a lot of it's, they really want to help their kids because statistically you look, usually the first generation will make wealth. The second generation so their kids will preserve it. And then by the third generation, it's gone. So how do you actually preserve it in generational wealth? What do you do? If let's, and this is for a lot of listeners, I don't have $100 million. I don't have all this money. I don't know how to do this. Well, it's good to think about, because if you don't have a plan, then you are planning to fail, right? So having some sort of, like, with a family office is typically what we call, if a family has more than 5 million or so in net worth, we'll say it's good to have a family core values or a family mission statement or stuff like this. And you basically start bringing the kids into it when they're young. Hey, this is what we do. This is what we're about. And this is how we charitably give. And here's what the money's for. And it's kind of this culture that you create in your family. Because I mean, my belief on wealth is that it's a steward thing, right? We have this money, we can give it. I want to make a lot of money so I can give a lot away. I also love to help my daughter and help my family. That's great as well. But I think just having really a lot of thought around it is important. Because again, there's actually this is a side note, a documentary on Netflix called Broke, which is about NFL and NBA players. And it says that 85% of them go broke within 2 to 5 years after being done. And it goes over all the different challenges. They literally have no financial education, and they're just given millions of dollars. And then between bad business deals, people from the hood, sometimes that want to be supported, or women that show up, and there's all these different things that happen. And so you look at all the pitfalls, and I think these are things we can all learn from to say, okay, when I get wealth, how do I want to handle this? What would this look like in my life?
Yeah, that's really sad. And I don't know how to solve it. Like, even going through school and stuff, you don't learn enough about wealth, and you don't, clearly, the more I get into chatting with people, you don't learn enough about the mindset that is connected to that. And even as adults, when you just assume, oh, you grow up, you're an adult, you'll figure things out. But to hear stories like that, there
Yeah.
needs to be some kind of a link. There needs to be, and I guess podcasts and stuff like this is what we're trying to do, is just kind of share knowledge, right? It's at our fingertips. I feel like this is all stuff we need to know, but we don't all know it. We, as the human collective, we don't all know this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something too that, there's a question of, why don't we know this, right? Why aren't we taught this? Why don't schools teach this? And some of it, there's not a big conspiracy, but the educational system, really, a lot of it was around, John Rockefeller really helped to expand, John D. Rockefeller. And really they were creating people that would be good employees, that would be good workers, that would come work in a factory. And now, so we have a lot of job seekers, but not a lot of job creators. And that's where I think the idea of wealth and business and other things is just, it's so important that we're continually learning, that we continually grow, because Brian Tracy, who's another motivational speaker, so I guess I'm full of quotes today, but he says, if you want to earn more, you have to learn more. And so it's just the idea that I have dramatically increased my earning and my opportunities and seeing things as they count, just simply by reading biographies, listening to biographies, or reading personal development or finance books, right? And so I imagine you're a reader and a learner as well. And so that's why people listen to shows like this, right? Is how can I get to be a little bit better? And as we do that, it's just things will open up that you never saw before.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep expanding your context, and the world, like the lens you start looking through, is completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your biggest piece of advice for someone who's just looking to go out there and create a life that they love?
I would say the number one thing is to really figure out what you want, really figure out what's important, and really define it. If I could have anything in life that I wanted, material or relationships, whatever, just start defining what that is, and then start to visualize that. Spend time thinking about it. Create a vision board. There's something called a mind movie. I just learned about a mind movie recently, and it's where you create a movie with words, and it's really powerful. I watch it every day. And so creating, again, what does that life look like for you? And then the more you create that and you figure out what you want, you can keep it in front of you, it will begin to show up for you. And then you'll create it again. It's okay, well, I'm still doing this. I'm still going for this. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
I love that. Thank you so much. And can you share with listeners where they can find your books, your podcast, all the good stuff? Where can they reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, thanks. So the best way to connect, I have a free gift for your audience here. It's a guide on how to use inflation to your advantage. So we all know inflation, everything costs 50% more than it did 5 years ago. And so inflation is obviously real. It's going to continue. And so instead of getting the pain at the pump and at the grocery stores, how do you actually get on the other side of that equation, right? In this guide here, it's basically 40 color pages, and it's a free download. We'll email it to you, but if you text the word inflation to the number 33777, so if you text the word inflation to 33777, it'll ask for your email. We'll send it over to you, and that'll kind of put you in touch with our deals and stuff we're working on too. But that's probably the best way to connect.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today and having this expansive conversation.
Thanks so much, Jen. It was a lot of fun. Really appreciate it.